This is a video stream which I was featured in on the date of October 24th, 2020.
At last, we're here, joined with Jason for the 16th installment of Chaos Under Heaven, where we talk about current events, news, politics, economics, theory, and philosophy from a far left perspective. Like I said, today I'm joined with Jason at last, and right now, today, we are going to talk about the beginning of the end, and pretty much how the United States is probably going to cease to be a country within the next 10 to 20 years. I don't know. Jason, let me ask you something.
Yeah.
How long do you give it until America ceases to be a country?
I mean, that's always a difficult question to answer because there are a lot of variables that we don't know. Like, for example, something could happen tomorrow. But if I say, if trends continue the way that they are now, which is generally the best way you have of measuring anything, we're probably looking 2025, 2026. I think that the main problem here is COVID has really done the economy some serious damage globally. Everybody has gotten it. And that's one of the things that drives me nuts about COVID conspiracy people saying about how, oh, this was just a thing that they did to gain control. Nobody at all tanks their economy to the degree that the U.S. economy has, or the global economy has been tanked right now for the sake of control. I'm pretty sure profits come before anything else.
No, the COVID has really thrown a rut in the global economy, and Donald Trump severely botched the fuck out of the response to it, because when it was here, he knew it was here. He was warned by the Chinese government, and he just ignored it because he didn't want his buddies at the stock market to panic. And lo and behold, we have millions of people, millions of confirmed cases, and 220,000 deaths. So I think we should start by talking a little bit about COVID. I'm going to pull up the COVID-19 chart and show you guys how bad it is. It's going to get worse. This shit is going to be seasonal. I mean, because we're entering the colder months, and it's going to really, really explode for reasons we will talk about later. But yeah, yesterday we had 85,000 new confirmed cases. Check this out. So look at that. And then around this time is when the George Floyd protests go on. Everybody goes outside. It spikes, and we have a peak of 75K. And now we're starting to return to normal, so to speak. People are just sort of acclimated to COVID now, and the economy's just running as usual. We gotta keep people going to work. Gotta keep them jobs. And look, oh my God, 85,000 new cases in a single day yesterday, buddy. Holy shit.
I honestly, I think that Trump's stupid rallies are a major contributing factor, as well as the protests against the lockdown are a major factor. There's now going to be a protest in Toronto every Saturday until the COVID restrictions are lifted.
I had this idea for a skit where basically I take chants from the BLM protests and I bastardize them a little bit. So there's a crowd of rednecks and hillbillies, and they're doing these Black Lives Matter chants, like, I can't breathe, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. They're chanting, I can't breathe. And I'm like dressed as like a news anchor. And I'm talking about how, yes, the protests are truly going wild over the outrage of the lockdown. Let us interview some of the people here. And I was going to get some of my buddies to play some of the rednecks. And I was going to play one of the rednecks. I was going to be like, we are standing against this lockdown. It is absolute totalitarianism. It is just clear that this was manufactured in a lab to increase government control. This isn't communism, socialism, or fascism. We are a constitutional republic, which is something that someone actually said.
I'm not really. Yeah. Okay.
No, like I'm gonna take shit that I've heard people say at these lockdown protests. like real stuff people have actually said. I'm not going to make up any of it. And it's just going to satirize itself. It's a skit that I've had on the table that I've wanted to work on, but I've been putting it off endlessly because of work. Funny shit.
One of the ones that I thought was kind of drove me nuts was okay. A person on Facebook, some random person that no one significant, said, "Oh, this is Soviet communism, saying we have to lock down and stuff like this." And I'm like, okay, because everything, because apparently boomers don't realize that the Cold fucking War is over.
Dude, I don't really think it's possible for America to exist outside of the context of the Cold War, because since the USSR's disappeared, we've been looking for the next target, be it Iran, China, modern day Russia, even though they're capitalists now. We're just looking for someone to have an arms race with. Like, seriously.
Some bloody Islams it is.
Inshallah.
The thing that I thought was funny, I brought up the last outbreak that took place in the Soviet Union. 1958, I believe it was, there was a smallpox outbreak in the Soviet Union. It was started because a guy came from India to the Soviet Union. I forget why. Well, whatever reason, he had smallpox, and there was an outbreak of smallpox. The Soviet Union managed to stop the outbreak in 19 days.
That is the words to describe that, how you don't even need to go as far as like a planned economy.
All they did, lock down, tell people to stay home, and wash hands, wear a mask. That was it. And they stopped. They stopped a smallpox pandemic in less than a month.
Yeah, no, and that's because planned economies are just very obviously equipped to do this, because you weren't operating on the modus operandi of profits, so you're actually able to do a proper fucking lockdown, and the state's actually able to clamp down and keep everyone in place. And the thing is that China, although they are not socialist, had the best response out of any country. And even their response was botched because they're limited by the fact that they operate on the profit motive. And like, are you familiar with the scientist in Wuhan, China, that was trying to warn people about the coronavirus? Like, are you familiar with that story at all?
I have heard about that.
Yeah, so he was trying to warn people about it, but state local officials were basically trying to silence him, censor him, and get him to shut up, basically, because they didn't want to lock down, because they had to keep the economy going. They had to keep the money going. Well, the virus exploded, and a bunch of people started getting infected, and then it left Wuhan. And that's when the Red Social Democrats came in to rein things in and do a proper lockdown and shut down basically multiple fucking cities. So that was the most appropriate response. Other countries have had very good responses as well. But the issue with America is, well, one, we're capitalism unhinged. We are the logical conclusion of fucking capitalist ideology. So, and not just that, but the culture of the government having any involvement in the economy at all. And on top of the fact that the ease of access, like, do you have any idea how difficult it would be to enforce a lockdown here in the United States? People have leeway and freeway to fucking hop in their car and drive wherever they want. So you would have to like massively draft a bunch of people to go everywhere to enforce that lockdown and have hard checkpoints literally all over the place, just because of the ease of individual transport and commutation. So because of that, our geography, we're so spread out, and the ease of transportation and just the culture and the general id and zeitgeist of the public here in America, tragically, that's why we had the worst response. Not to mention Donald Trump's an idiot. I think the Democrats would have botched it too. I just don't think they would have done it as badly as Trump. because I think they're just as motivated to keep the stock market going as the Republicans are.
Yeah, I think it's a case of this. It would have. It was always going to be bad, but it was extra bad because Trump's dumb, and like maybe dumb isn't the right word. Selfish. He was more concerned about his public image than trying to stop the pandemic from happening. Like, you know what I mean? It wasn't even just about profits. It was about him protecting his own ego and his own public perception. Like, I mean, look at like what he's doing now. He's saying like, "Oh, I'm going to lift the lockdown soon." He's basically saying, "Vote for me, and I'll end the lockdown. You can do whatever you want. Vote for Joe Biden, and you're going to get locked down and restricted."
Yeah, and it's pretty crazy how
people with their own death.
It's crazy to think that's a selling point. I won't lock down the economy and try and stop the virus. I mean, at this point, it doesn't really matter that much. The cat's sort of out of the bag. So, I mean, not really a lot you can do about it now. And, I mean, COVID has just wreaked havoc. Have you seen, like, the plunge of the Dow Jones, like, back in February or March? Like, I'm going to look that up now. Just how the stock market took a nosedive when COVID arrived. Type this in.
The idiocy of the stock market is just unfathomable. It's bad because we believe it's bad. It's good because we believe it's good. Like the objective of the situation doesn't even matter.
Okay, perfect. I found the chart that I was looking for, and this is a very substantial chart that I'd like to share. So here it is. Let's see if I can make this bigger. I wish I could size this up. So this is the S&P 500 index, and this is showing it climbing. The dot-com crisis was this green chart you see here. This is the subprime mortgage crisis. So the subprime mortgage crisis was more of like a slow downward glide to here. And then this is the plunge. This is even worse than the Great Depression, the plunge you see right here, like 15, 30 days into the pandemic. This is literally the worst plunge in history. And if you guys want to know why we had this huge recovery, it's because we printed trillions of dollars in liquidity and basically hyperinflated all these stocks. At this point, we just fucking paid the capitalists directly. We've socialized the stock market effectively.
Yeah, once the profitability started going down, obviously the stock would go down, and then you just give them free money that inflated their bank accounts. So that increased the health of the companies, and that made their stock go back up. See, we're not broke. We got money out of nowhere.
The issue is, like, how long can they keep this up? Because this doesn't address the fundamental underlying problem with the economy, which is the profitability crisis. There simply is not enough demand in market share for these companies to secure to stay profitable. We are now starting to hit what single-digit % rate of returns on investment. The rate of profit is that low at this point.
And that's going to be the problem for the next 5 to 6 years. That's just going to get worse.
There's this analogy from this show I watched a month ago. I'm a huge nerd for it. It's the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance. Well, there's a scene where, like, all the birdmen, the Skeksis, are like surrounding this crystal, which is like the heart of the world, and they're like basically eating it. They're like eating the energy from it. But like the analogy they make is that the more they consume, the less that there is to take from it. So in a similar manner to that, it's like the capitalists, the more that they take, the less that there is to give, is what I'm trying to say. And that's the long-term consequence of running the system as long as we have. And I just wonder what the breaking point is. Like, how much can they possibly hoard before everything just goes to shit?
I think that's a very big question. because Marx did predict that there'd be an eventual tendency of the rate of profit fall to the point of creating a global crisis. I think that Marx underestimated exactly how dynamic capitalism would be in saving itself. It, of course, can't save itself forever. The day is going to come where it can't do anything, and we may very well be at that point, but we've believed we were at that point several times before.
We've been at that point. Oh, sorry, go on.
I think it's possible that they could pull a rabbit out of their hat and save it. I have no idea what that could be, but it has happened so many times in the past. If they don't do it, this will be the end of it. This will be the end of profitability, and capital is going to start getting destroyed. And of course, once capital is destroyed, they can always rebuild.
Yeah, and that's where I was going to go with that, is traditionally they went to war, and the wars basically set the clocks back on the rate of profit because the organic composition of capital, which is the ratio between constant capital and variable capital, was basically destroyed. Means of production were destroyed. And that's the reason why our economy the global economy made such a substantial recovery after World War II. It was along with the fact that FDR came along and helped restore profitability by taking away some of the risk associated with investment. He started to socialize capitalist risk to an extent. And a lot of people don't know that about FDR is he was repairing the system, and he brought reforms just enough to buy people off or reduce the degree to which people will fight back and do some redistribution type policies. But ultimately, it was just in an effort to save the system. But what really saved it was World War II and the post-war reconstruction. But now we're getting to that point again where they're pretty much running out of places to exploit, running out. And not only that, but you have the ecological catastrophe coming. Like, 10 million people die of air pollution every single year. All the forests are shrinking. That's another thing. Capitalism doesn't just exploit and penetrate, humanity. It also penetrates the earth as well. And, if you talk to any life scientists, they will tell you that every life support system is in decline.
Yeah, that's pretty much the problem. There was a guy that told me that historians have noted that all empires have fallen at the point of three crises. Two major crises is all that any empire can handle. Once the third one hits, the system is pretty much finished. If we consider the ecological, the COVID, and the economic crisis, all of them flared up to a large extent at the same time, that's going to be enough.
Oh, yeah, there's a couple other factors that are coming. It's not just going to be those three things. With COVID, the tragic and scary part about COVID is it's going to take them years to develop a functioning vaccine because the rate at which the virus mutates and how infectious it is. This shit could be lingering for years, dude. Like, COVID could be around for like a decade, and we're already hitting a deadly third wave as we enter winter. And as you know, and as I've talked about in the past, we have an evictions crisis coming. I forget the study, but I was watching it on Secular Talk. Something like as many as 50% of Americans are at risk of being evicted, moderate to high risk of evictions. So you're going to have millions of people thrown out into the cold during a pandemic, and that's going to cause COVID cases to explode. Not to mention the civil unrest from all the people being dragged out of their homes once all those moratoriums expire.
Yeah, it's going to be, I mean, like would we consider the homeless crisis part of the economic crisis? Either way, it's still going to be a severe problem. But I've been talking to a person who knows a lot of doctors, ones that particularly deal with like infections, seasonal kind of stuff, and they said they're concerned that this is heading in the direction of an endemic. No longer a pandemic, but an endemic, meaning as an endemic is something that doesn't go away. Like, this may become permanent.
Oh yeah, no, COVID's going to be around for a while. What scares me about it is you can get reinfected with it too. Now, I'm not really afraid of getting sick again. I've had it once, and I didn't even get a fever. So I have a very strong, healthy immune system, but it's really my family members and friends that I'm concerned about, because when I caught it, they all caught it and they all got sick, and my parents almost died, dude. Like I was terrified. Like I had to stay home and take care of them and, nurse my mom and dad back to health while they were sick. And I was sick, and my brother got really sick. I got a couple of my friends sick by accident. I didn't even know I had it. Like, I never went in and got tested. It's when my family members got tested, they tested positive for COVID. And then that made me realize, oh shit, I was sick. I got sick a few days ago. They all got sick from me. I have COVID. And I mean, fortunately, no one died, but it was just rough for everybody. I was really scared, man. And the idea that that can happen again really terrifies me, because this shit mutates fast. Apparently, there's like 7 strains of it out there now.
I know someone who's had it twice. Actually, I know more than one person that's had it twice. So I definitely
and
this is the thing that can happen.
Yeah, and for people who are irresponsive, if you're young and you have a healthy immune system, it's not really going to be that much different from having the flu. But if you're an older person or someone with like a compromised immune system, this shit's fucking deadly. It's like 3 to 5 times deadlier than the flu if you're a part of that category. So that's a huge point of concern. And I mean, the cat's out of the bag. I think this virus is going to kill like 5 to 10 million Americans by the time this is all said and done. This is going to basically be fucking America's Holodomor, so to speak. This is going to be like the huge blunder that kills millions of people, and it's thanks to the incompetence of the Trump administration. Like I said, I think. Go on.
The fucked up part about this is the Holodomor was a heat wave, something that they couldn't have done anything about other than to deal with it. None of this had to happen.
Oh yeah, no, this was totally preventable. All we had to do from the get-go was quarantine the area where the virus was reported, give these people the ventilators and the equipment that they need to treat these patients, keep everyone in place, lock the fuck down for just a solid 2 weeks, make sure everybody recovers, and then shut down the airline industry. No one goes in, no one goes out of the country. But in order to do that, that would actually require you to have like a state apparatus that's properly built to address the issues, the issue. And we don't. Here in America, we have a state that is fundamentally incapable of dealing with a pandemic, that's fundamentally incapable of taking care of its people, that will leave us out in the dry. That's what's so scary about me, dude. Like, and people are still fucking talking about voting for the lesser of 2 evils when we have a government that is fundamentally incapable from its very foundations from addressing the needs of the general public. And that's a ridiculous situation. Like, we still have this market economy, and I think capitalism's had its day, dude. Like, we've got all the products and commodities out, we've got all the markets that have been, tapped into and saturated that you can possibly think of. We really need to move away from a market economy if we want to even begin to address the issues that are coming up. COVID, the crisis, yada yada. There is an alternative to just simply bailing out the stock market over and over again. And it's an alternative that I would actually preserve capitalism as a system. And I'm wondering if you know what that is.
Yeah, QE?
What's QE?
Quantitative easing.
Well, the solution that I have, it's in a video I talked about the real reason why you're unemployed, is you take all these industries that are crashing and going bankrupt, you let them fail, but you give them an option. You tell them, we will buy your industry up for pennies on the dollar cheap, and you guys can get your exit bonus so you can all stay rich, you'll all still be rich, but we're going to buy all your industry out. The government comes in, buys all the industry, nationalizes it, and establishes state capitalism and economic planning, institutes like universal healthcare, universal jobs guarantee. You go basically full state capitalist is pretty much my proposal. You can suppress the profit motive, suppress the capitalist class, keep them in line, so to speak. This is the class collaborationist route. It's not my route, but it's a route that could save America if their goal was to preserve capitalism as a system.
Yeah, that would do it. There's very little doubt in my mind that would work. It would, but how much of a pushback are you going to get?
Well, the capitalists don't want to do it because it has deadly implications for their system a couple decades down the line. Because in order to do such a thing, it would require you to give a bargaining chip to the workers. It would mean giving workers a seat at the table rather than just having them be constantly just these products that are exploited and manipulated in every conceivable way possible. It would actually require you workers have some say in the production process, which would lead to the logic for the construction and push for socialism down the line.
Yeah, and to them, it's a slippery slope. One day you're not allowed to say the N-word, and the next day you have Stalin.
Exactly. And that's what they're terrified of, because they know the implications of it. It's sort of like all Porky knows how to do is protect his interests. That's what he does. That's all he does. And the collective of the capitalist class does what they think is best for their collective interest. They want to make money now and protect their interests now. So it's kind of weird because at the same time, many of them are so like, they see like the market as a sacred cow. So they don't want any government interference whatsoever because they've been brainwashed from the day they were born into thinking like anything to the fucking left of Margaret Thatcher is communism. So these people are wholly convinced in the sanctity of the market, and all the clergymen of the market that the economists can do is bailout after bailout, which is a huge contradiction of their principles, but they don't give a fuck. They're trying to keep the whole economy going. I mean, if you actually look at like modern capitalist economists, none of them are actually libertarian. None of them actually follow the Austrian school or take it seriously.
No,
not at all. If we followed the Austrian school of economics and just let the crash happen, we'd be living in fucking Mad Max right now.
I don't know. If you make it Fallout, I might agree with you.
Fallout, Mad Max. The point is, society will utterly collapse and tens of millions of people will be dead within like 5 to 10 years time, because the infrastructure needed to support life as is will be gone, because we've gone from having centralized corporations that can deliver the goods to having all these supply lines collapsing and all the food and like supplies people need to maintain the upkeep on their livelihoods just disappearing. You'll have massive looting, banditry, crime, violence. You know, that's the real accelerationist choice, is let the libertarians have what they want, where just society completely falls apart.
I'm inundated with this image of a guy with like ratty clothes and a cane struggling to walk down the street, coughing a lung out, saying, "I just saw the new Marvel movie."
I'm thinking of how
I'm dying of COVID, but at least I saw the new Marvel movie. I'm free.
That brings up an interesting point. So do you know what the post-truth era is?
I think we're in it right now.
Yeah, I'm not too familiar with the concept.
As far as I understand it, and by no means am I an expert on this, but from my very layman's understanding of it, it's just go ahead and think whatever you want.
That's exactly what it is. It's basically where facts literally don't matter in terms of shaping the public opinion anymore. The facts just don't matter. Basically, that's the post-truth era. I think we aren't in the post-truth era. There's a concept that I've been theorizing called the post-truth era, where not only facts don't matter anymore. Facts. It's not just that facts don't matter anymore. They also, even if they did matter to people, they still wouldn't give a shit. Basically.
My
So even
feelings don't care about your facts and logic.
exactly. So it's like another layer of apathy beyond the current level of apathy we're experiencing now. And what you just said, oh, I'm dying of COVID, but hey, at least I saw the new Marvel movie, is a golden example of that, because even though these problems are directly materially affecting people and the public opinion is on large, yeah, this is bad, nobody gives a fuck to do anything about it because we're so isolated and alienated, and we're so married to the idea that we can just vote for a politician that'll fix our problems and save the day, that nobody actually wants to go out and engage in direct action. So that's what I consider the post-truth era.
You riding with Biden?
Oh yeah, man, I think we can push him left. I really do.
Dude, the only way you could push Biden left is with a baseball bat.
Oh yeah, no, we can definitely push him left. Oh wait, you're trying to do that during midterms? Wait, no, you're being too unreasonable. We have to beat the Republican. We can't try to push him left. You're being ridiculous. Which is going to be the arguments that all these fucking rad libs are going to be making next time it comes around to vote. We can't push him left because then we risk losing to the Republicans. We just got to fall in line and not leverage our support.
So what we have to do is get them to say one thing and then do another.
Exactly, which is why I think this "oh, we can push them left" rhetoric is just it's just a way to deflect from extremely reasonable and accurate criticism of the people that are saying this shit. I've got a response video lined up to Contra, man. I watched her video on it and she sold out hard, dude. Like hardcore, she fucking sold out.
Are you suggesting BreadTube sold out?
Well, yeah, and it's pretty much what's her name? Jody Dean talks about it. It's called communicative capital. It is the commodification of ideas in people's consumption habits on the internet. The whole point is to keep people on the internet watching YouTube for longer and longer periods of time, because that engagement is ad space. It's ad time. It keeps people subjected to advertisements. And the reason why BreadTube emerged, although it has it's literally commodified anti-capitalism. It's anti-capitalism commodified. People don't like capitalism. It's growing out of a desire for people to resist capitalism, but what it is it's commodified. So instead of people going out and making and doing their own anti-capitalism, they instead have an outlet for it in the form of the BreadTube content creators criticizing it. Does that make sense? And these BreadTube content creators, basically, insofar as they bring in ad revenue, that is their value to YouTube. And that's the reason why the algorithm suppresses like actual communists, because we can't be commodified in the same way BreadTube does, because we fundamentally challenge the system in ways that they are fundamentally incapable of doing themselves.
I mean, I don't want to toot my own horn here, but you ever notice that the ones that are really against the system are the ones who aren't getting that kind of exposure?
No, it's true. It's definitely true. And there's things that we can do about it, but that's the scary part to me, is insofar as anti-capitalism can be commodified, that's the extent to which you're going to get it. And when people have that outlet, they're less likely to go out and actually do shit about it, because it's sort of like they've done studies like with video games. When you play the violent video game, it actually has a habit of making you less violent. Like, you ever hear about that guy Jack Thompson, that lawyer back in the 2000s, who was on a crusade against Grand Theft Auto because he said that they're murder simulators that are inspiring these spree killers at schools?
I remember that hysteria in the mid 1990s when the Columbine shooting happened, and it was the result of video games, movies, violent movies, and the liberal media.
Yeah. Well, I think they've done studies on this, and they've actually found that when people play violent video games, it provides an outlet for their more violent and aggressive tendencies, and it actually makes them less violent over time. So ironically, this is the genius of BreadTube, the incredible genius. Not only is it profitable to commodify anti-capitalism, it is also a tool of control in a sense, because people have an outlet. Now they're less likely to fucking go out and do their own anti-capitalism. Does that make sense? People have an outlet for anti-capitalism.
I definitely believe it. I mean, why, go out and get your ass shot by the cops or beaten up by a poor boy, proud boy, or whatever they're called now, and when you can just sit home and watch a Jason Unruhe video?
Yeah, exactly.
That's the fucked up contradiction. I'm trying to tell you to do something about the problem, but by listening to me, you're part of the problem. God damn it.
Yeah, but I think there's a difference between you doing it and someone like, say, a Bosch or a ContraPoints doing it, because you actually advocate for effective praxis, and you're right. They are going to tell you to go vote blue, while you're going to tell people, fuck that, get involved in your communities and so on. And that's really what we all should be doing. I mean, this isn't all I do, guys. Like, I get involved in activism outside of YouTube. I just don't ever talk about it. But yeah, I think that's something that we really need to stress, is just to encourage and motivate people to go out and do practice.
Like, for example, and I've said this before, judging by ContraPoints Patreon, that's about $9,500 a month.
Hold on a second.
Yeah, go look it up.
So this is how much money you need to make in order to sell out and be a lib.
Okay, so imagine if I had $9,000, $10,000 a month. You realize that ContraPoints makes almost, what, $120,000 a year? Now imagine what I could do with $120,000 a year.
No, she has 12,000 Patreons. But how much does she make?
Wait a minute. Oh, yes. You said, 12,000 patrons, right?
Yeah. But how? Yeah. What does that translate to?
Let's say $1 a month from every one of them.
This bitch has a net worth in the hundreds of thousands.
Yeah. Think about this. So look at that. I was underestimating. I was underestimating by a lot. So think about that. If I had that kind of money, do you know how much shit I would fuck up if I had that kind of money?
Dude, you could be a media machine with that kind of money. Are you kidding me? You
with
could be the
money. I would open a news studio. I would fucking hire people. You'd see my fucking ugly face on Super Bowl ads.
Yeah, and we'd be able to basically actually do propaganda a lot more effectively. But instead, it's going to the people that are the most commodifiable. And that's the tragic part, is in order for us to get our names out there, capitalism has to be able to commodify us. And the more that they do it, the more we become debanged. So we have to rely on our own steam, in a sense. I mean, what it comes down to is we just need to provide an alternative. I mean, the reason why their ContraPoints exists is because the system produces people like this. And, people have demand for it, and we need to produce an alternative to it. And I think the real revolutionaries, the people that really are going to go out there and do things and fuck shit up, they're going to abandon BreadTube, and they're going to move on eventually. And they're going to go beyond BreadTube and go, because they're looking for actual praxis. They're looking for, like, effective theory, like, because they actually care about changing the world. And I think that we're going to be there, because you got to understand, man, e-celebs come and e-celebs go. And they're only in it for the money. I think you and I both know this. The BreadTubers, the right-wingers, the left-wing political commentary, all these channels, they're all grifters. They're all in it only for the money. So channels come, channels go. But because we're not in it for the money, we'll be here when people are finally ready to, like, look for the true alternative to the system.
Like, you remember when they tried to cancel ContraPoints because somebody was on her show and they said, "Oh, I'm skeptical of gender." Okay, you're skeptical of gender, fine. And then they tried to cancel her for that, and then she shut down. I was like, ContraPoints isn't going anywhere. That kind of money, that kind of income, she's not going anywhere. She's not giving that up. Nobody, and it's not even her. Nobody in the right fucking mind would give up that kind of cash. No way.
Hell no, dude. I'm not gonna lie, man. I don't even want that fucking cash. Like, if I had an opportunity to get that kind of money, I wouldn't even fucking want it. And let me tell you why. You want to know why? The reason being is because if it's going to turn me into Vosh, or if it's going to turn me into ContraPoints, and I have to compromise my own artistic and intellectual integrity so that I can make more cash, make more bucks, and just pursue the dollar, the cash, bling, bling, yo, then I don't even fucking want it. You know,
Well,
I don't ever want to sell out.
There is a way, you know, get that kind of money and then have the government knock on your door. Hey, where'd all that money go? Last time we saw it went to the Philippines. It went to Peru. It disappeared.
Oh yeah. I'm gonna be real.
I accidentally dropped a suitcase full of $50,000 in the jungles of the Philippines. I don't know what happened, man. You know, it was an accident.
No, that kind of reminds me what I would do if I were a billionaire. If I had $1 billion, or if I had Jeff Bezos's money, I would buy a private jet, I would fly the world, and I would go to revolutionary movements across the globe, giving them very generous donations all over the globe, from Peru to India. I'd be doing the Lord, like the movie Lord of War, where he's like selling guns. I'd be giving that shit to them for free, dude. And I'd be traveling the world, giving all these movements resources and money. It's very unfortunate that I am not a billionaire.
Like that scene from The Simpsons with the blimp and they're throwing the leaflets, just throwing free guns out of the blimp. Just like free guns.
I'd be passing out Kalashnikovs and shoulder RPGs to the Maxwells in India like they're fucking candy on Halloween.
Well, just, I mean, even from, okay, let's just say a really plain, reasonable, fully legal thing. With that kind of money, I could rent out a studio. I could hire people. I could get better equipment for making videos. Like, there is so much I could do, and I wouldn't even need that much. You could give me a quarter of that, a tenth of that, and I could probably do it.
But then that's money. That's less money for plastic surgery and boob jobs and hormone therapy and more money.
I'm not going to comment on that.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, good point. Yeah, but
I will say that there are more productive things that I could have put that money into.
Yeah, exactly. That's all I'm trying to say. I mean, I guess that's kind of like the privilege of being a trans person with cash, is like you can get the surgery you need in order to pass, and like poor trans folk can't do that, and it's a tragedy, honestly, which is why under socialism that shit would be subsidized.
Yeah, for example, there's like a shit ton of homeless trans people. Like, what is it, like a good percentage of homeless youth are actually trans? And they're homeless because they're trans. Like, shit, you could do a lot to help them with that kind of money.
Yeah, they're ousted by their own families. Like, you could go and give them you could give those people that money, or not money, but I don't know. I think there needs to be more campaigns for acceptance and so on. And you see, trans rights is one of those things that could be done and implemented very easily under the context of socialism, because you actually have a government that's designed to, you know, respond to the needs of the people. And this is something that I really want to make a big push for, because we need to basically build our own governments from scratch. And in order to do that, you need to get people on your side. Yeah, dual power. That's something that I stressed in my most recent video. Hold on a second. Bosch once said that money is necessary to win social change. He doesn't want to abolish money. I know he doesn't, because he's also has the class interests of a petite bourgeois. I watched the live stream between Bosch and Contra, and I was listening to her comments on Stalin, and she said something along the lines of, sure, he industrialized the country and beat Hitler, but, I don't feel like I personally would thrive in such a society. And I was just thinking in the back of my mind, yeah, I bet you wouldn't, bitch. It just goes to show its class interests. You can clearly tell like people's class interests.
So what if you didn't? Like I once had a debate on a Discord server, a guy saying, well, I'm an artist, and if there's socialism, if there's communism, how do I know there's a guarantee that I'm going to be able to not even make a living at art, but just be able to do it in my spare time? Like, am I going to be able to get access to paint and canvas and do all this stuff? And I said, sure, why not? I mean, there was painting, there was art in the Soviet Union and all that. Well, how do I know for sure that's going to happen in socialism? And I said, okay, imagine this. Imagine we get socialism. Poverty is eradicated. The environment is saved. Wars are over, but you could never paint ever again. Is that worth it to you? Is that a trade-off? No. Well, there you go.
People are just super fucking propagandized by this shit. They're just bombarded from the day they can stand communism bad. And I know this because my dad was a pretty hardline anti-communist, because every time I would criticize or talk shit about capitalism as a teenager, he would always talk about, something, Stalin, Mao, gulags, whatever. And I'm like, but I just want people to have health care. I don't want to make society a dictatorship, I just want people to be taken care of. Is that so wrong? And he's like, yeah, but they tried that and it failed. It was a disaster. And I'm like, well, then let's learn from it. Why can't we just do it different? If they were too dictatorial or whatever, we have rights now. Let's just not be dictatorial. And he's like, no, that'll never work. And I don't know. I mean, all that silly bullshit's past me now, but back in the day, I was spooked by anti-communism, which is why I personally was an anarchist, till I came across you and the Finnish Bolshevik and Michael Parenti, and then I realized, oh, I've been lied to my whole life. So, voila, the rest is history.
Yeah, in terms of the anti-communist propaganda, it's like, dude, I don't even want to deal with that shit anymore. Like, a member of my family was on my sister's husband's side. They go, do you know how many people Stalin killed? And I go, yeah, that's so fucking metal.
Every time people bring up death tolls under like XYZ communist leader, I always think, the number of people that died under Bush's war on terror far exceed the number of people that were killed under Stalin's purges. And we're sitting here treating this guy like he's a uniquely evil historical figure, when there are many other historical figures that have killed just as much, if not way more people, And like, if we're really you want to know why they bring up the death tolls? It's because they're trying to propagandize to their audience. It's because they're trying to scare people. It's a very dehumanizing, fucked up tactic that they use to basically pretty much draw the parallel: communism, death, bad. That's pretty much all it is. It's psychological manipulation, which is why they constantly play the numbers game,
Because the number game is easy, and two, you don't have to go into anything of substance.
No, yeah, no. It's almost like it's sort of like it's Brando. It's good for you. It's just become common sense that communism, gulags, Marx, Stalin, sharing stuff with people, bad.
Yeah, I had an idea for a video a long time ago, which basically went like there's two kids in kindergarten, and the teacher says, I want you to share this toy. And then one of the parents kicks open the door and says, this is communism. But yeah, give me the question or whatever it is.
Yeah, go for it. And while we're waiting on that, there is another point that going back to the collapse of America, I want to talk a little bit about Trump's coup. So, are you familiar with Trump's comments in an interview?
I'm going to show you an interview.
Whoa. I was going to... My bad. But what I was going to say is, in the comments in an interview, Trump said that during the transition to power, he's alluded that he's not going to step down peacefully. And during the debate with Biden, the first debate, he actively bragged about having the military on his side. Oh, here's the question. Can my comrades at the Internationalist Resistance Guard and Global Revolutionary Shining Path? Wait, what? I don't understand that question.
Can they?
Get their books published by MRN Publishing?
Well,
oh,
yeah, sure. As soon as I can find a place to do it, since I got banned off of Lulu.
Shit. Man, you get banned a lot. You're a troublemaker.
I don't get banned as much as a lot of people do, because I very carefully word things in a way that makes it more palatable to the system. Let's say it's a very careful way of saying this.
Oh yeah, no. Instead of using the word kill, I use the word liquidate. See, like that, you can make yourself friendlier to not being banned.
There's a lot of insults that I used to use that I can now no longer use because of YouTube's guidelines.
Okay.
One of the things, one of my favorite insults IRL is to call someone who makes me angry subhuman garbage. But you're not allowed to do that because part of YouTube's guidelines that you're not allowed to refer to individuals or persons as being less human. Now, I understand why that rule exists. It's to combat Nazi propaganda on the platform. I agree. To hell with the Nazis. But you get it. I have to frequently censor myself because I say, you tell the odd time when I say something like that, I end up beeping myself out.
Oh yeah. Dog whistling is a useful tactic. There's the reason why right-wingers do it all the time. I only dog whistle very specific things because I know if I were to use certain words, I would be violating YouTube's guidelines. So code speak is definitely important. I've come to learn this the hard way. But anyways, back to Trump's coup. All right, I'm going to go ahead and screen share. Don't worry, guys. I'll answer more questions here in a minute. But yeah, asked Wednesday if he wanted to commit to a peaceful transfer to power, the leader of our soon-to-be former democracy said, "We're going to see what happens. We're going to see what happens. You know what? I've been complaining very strongly about the ballots, and the ballots are a disaster." He's bragged about having like several military, like a bunch of military lieutenants on his side, and like people in the military love him very much. He's bragged about that while debating Joe Biden. And he's also been talking a lot about the ballots. Well, here's why this is important. Keep this ballot box factor in mind. This will be an important factor later. I have this video from Secular Talk talking about the Red Mirage. Jason, do you know what the Red Mirage is?
I'm assuming that's like red scaring.
No, not at all. But you'll see here in a second. There was an interview with a Bloomberg statistics guy right here talking about how on November 3rd it will appear as though Trump has won, but once all the ballots, the mail order ballots get tallied, it will appear as though Biden has won. So there's going to be a vagary period between the 3rd and the 10th where it calls into question the legitimacy. And that's why, you know, Trump's talking shit about the mail-in ballots. People who are mailing in the ballots, you know, I'll just let this guy explain.
Is something that appears to be there, but that doesn't really
Can you hear it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Exist. And you have a model scenario called the Red Mirage. What does that mean?
The reason we talk about a red mirage is, in fact, because we believe that on election night, we are going to see Donald Trump in a stronger position than the reality actually is. We are sounding an alarm and saying that this is a very real possibility, that the data is going to show on election night an incredible victory for Donald Trump. That is likely to be what we see when every legitimate vote is tallied and we get to that final day, which will be someday after election day. It will, in fact, show that what happened on election night was exactly that, a mirage. It looked like Donald Trump was in the lead, and he fundamentally was not when every ballot gets counted.
You have a result on election night where it appears that Donald Trump has won, but a result after ballots are counted that show that Joe Biden has actually won.
That's right.
Let's get an obvious question out of the way first. Hawkfish is a company that's started by Michael Bloomberg, that does work for the DNC, that's doing work for pro-Biden super PACs. If I'm a Republican voter, an independent voter, a skeptical Democrat, why should I listen to you?
One of the things that we believe is that facts matter. It's not about disinformation or misinformation or using fear as a tactic. There are objective truths in this world today.
And how do you build your
I'm going to go use the restroom, but I'll be right back. But I'm going to keep playing this.
modeling? How are you basing your projections?
We essentially built a simulator where it's a sequence of sliders, and you just pull those sliders to start seeing what the scenarios will show you. What's it going to look like on election night? What's it going to look like the day after, and the day after that, and the day after that? In most every year, Democrats are more likely to vote by mail than Republicans, and that has only increased this cycle. We see in the data that twice as many voters intend to cast a ballot by mail than have ever before. They are disproportionately Joe Biden's supporters. Because there are absolutely some ballots that were mailed in that get counted sooner because folks were proactive and got it in as soon as they possibly could, or dropped it off, or showed up to a polling station where early votes allowed. But it's going to take a while. It might be weeks. Because absentee ballots inevitably are harder and slower to count. We are going to find ourselves that when you have those prototypical cable news talking head moments of saying, well, here's what we're seeing and this is what it looks like, it's going to show Donald Trump in the lead in a lot of key places on election night when in-person reporting has occurred.
What about California or New York?
California is blue. New York
Okay.
is blue, right? Some of the but Virginia is a really good example of a state that should be blue, that turns out red in this
On election night.
on election night.
Okay.
So a state like Pennsylvania, Florida, it's in play by just a couple points, and that's what tips it in one direction or another. If you were to essentially average battleground state polling, Joe Biden appears to be ahead by about 8%. And so if you have a number of ballot challenges in a state like that, as big as it is, as large as the population is, as diverse as the population is, it can make a really big difference over those next 10 days. And so when you start accounting for that in your modeling, you see that 8% lead kind of whittle down a little bit more. We might have the results saying something on the evening of November 3rd that it will not say the evening of November 10th.
What difference does it make if the results seem to show something on one night and then several days later the results show something else? Won't the facts just bear themselves out?
I think that's the America we all wish we probably lived in. I think we've got the Trump team who's quite intelligent and sees what's coming, and so we have the president messaging through tweets, through what he said at his rallies and speeches, this notion of any change from that result on election day means fraud.
So, got any commentary?
Yeah, I mean, he's pretty much already set it up so that if he loses, it must be a plot against him because he can't actually lose.
Yeah, and this is how I think Trump plans on pulling off a coup d'etat. He's going to use this to basically call the election illegitimate, and I wouldn't be surprised if because of this, there wouldn't be an inauguration all the way up until January 20th, or there wouldn't be an election is what I'm trying to say. and all the way up until inauguration day, like nobody's elected, and the whole thing is just kept nebulous, and we don't know for sure who the elected candidate is. I think there's going to be a lot of fucking unrest from the right, a lot of unrest, and I think Trump might just do it. He might just pull off a coup, and I hope he does, because that will destabilize the fuck out of this country. Part of me kind of hopes he does pull it off, because it's just going to cause so much civil unrest, dude. Like, you know about like the attempted military coup in the Soviet Union against Gorbachev, right? Yeah. And how that put the legitimacy of the whole system into question. I think we're going to be in a similar situation to that come pretty soon, on top of all the evictions, COVID, and the slow recovery, the longer depressions, the mounting problems, mental illness, the rioting and the protesting. It's going to be so fucking ugly next year, dude. I would not be surprised if we ceased to be a country within like next year's time because of this shit.
That could very well happen. And proceed that now every person who goes along with this, what's the word I'm looking for? Everybody who is mindlessly supporting Trump like this and basically giving him a free hand to steal the election will then turn around and say Stalin was a dictator. Yeah, I said.
Yeah, I was just looking at questions, or see if anybody had anything to say. Let's see. I guess not. So yeah, this is my thesis, and these are just the short-term problems that are coming. What do you know of? You said like 2025, 2026 is when there's like another looming crisis coming in, and I was thinking a lot about that. Do you have like an article or a resource that you could link me, and we could probably review and talk about that real quick?
Not offhand, but I have heard that kind of estimate from mainstream bourgeois economists. So I'm really going by their expertise on this. They're basically saying if nothing changes by this time, we're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, something's got to change, but right now it seems like they're pretty content with continuously kicking the can down the road. There is a comment that someone made about the coup. So in terms of the coup, people are saying that it won't work. The military will remove Trump. I don't think Trump he has some support, just not very much. I don't think the bourgeoisie will allow him to coup. I'm not concerned about the coup succeeding. That's not the point. The point is the attempted coup d'etat is what's going to cause the civil unrest, because then you're going to have all these idiots like the Boogaloo boys coming out of the woodworks. You're going to have a sect, a bunch of the Republicans, because Donald Trump has a cult that follows him. His cultists are all very radical, very about him. I don't know if you guys have talked to your average Trump supporter, but they love Trump. So they're going to make a lot of noise and a lot of ruckus. And I think what it's going to do is it's going to cause a lot of people to question the legitimacy of our democracy. And if it succeeds, I mean, it's a lose-lose situation, because if he succeeds, then it will throw the legitimacy of our parliament into question. But if he fails, it's still going to do that, because you're going to have people on the right throwing around that very same rhetoric, like Trump got robbed, the election was rigged, the mail order ballot bullshit. You know, and you're going to have people on the right make noise instead of people on the left. So either way you go, you're going to have a sect of the population who's going to be totally fucking disillusioned because of this.
Yeah. I mean, go ahead and, vote Trump, get the collapse, vote Biden, and, the liberals and the more radical liberals go back to sleep.
Yeah, I think Trump has overall been a good thing for us in some regards, contrary to what many rad libs will say, because Donald Trump, no president in U.S. history has done as much damage to the U.S. imperial apparatus as Donald Trump. He hasn't gotten us into any more wars. Every coup that has taken place in Latin America has failed, fallen flat on its face. Evo's party just reassumed power. I mean, we both know this. He accidentally reinitiated peace talks with North Korea. He has been pulling troops out of Afghanistan and out of Syria and out of Iraq, and slowly, like, imperialism has been on a retreat under Donald Trump. He's failed to deliver on the war that the neocon warhawks want. I'm not going to lie. I think Biden is more likely than Trump to get us involved in more regime change type shit.
Oh, definitely.
Biden is just going to run the imperial apparatus a lot more competently. Trump is just running it into the fucking ground. And that's why I think he's overall been the real harm reduction candidate. And that's something that people don't factor into their analysis, is like the global scale. They only think of what's going on in America domestically. And I do think Biden would be a little bit better domestically. But I think on a global scale, when it comes to foreign policy, which matters a lot to both of us, I think that Trump is the strictly better choice, just because he's such an incompetent imperialist. He just sucks so much at it.
Good at tearing the mask off of the liberal democracy.
Oh, yeah. And that's the other thing, is Donald Trump, he's just a Republican. Like, that's what a lot of people don't understand about the Cheeto Man, is he's just the logical continuation of the Republican Party. Like, there's nothing uniquely evil about Donald Trump, you know. He's just George Bush, you know. He's just another George Bush. He's just this goofy, zany, quirky dude who's, you know, got his witty one-liners, who's not a very good public speaker, who kind of plays up being like the low IQ doofus. That's something the Republicans do. They tend to pick up like this strongman type face for their party, because that's all they have at this point. So even if, you know, we vote out Donald Trump, the implications and the scary thing about this is that down the line, we're only going to get another Trump. And that other Trump, like, and I think we're going to get someone akin to an American Hitler. I think he's out there, and I think it's probably going to be someone like Tucker Carlson, who's sort of like a faux populist, but an American Hitler is coming. And there's nothing that rad lib praxis can do about it.
Harm reduction.
Oh, yeah. That's the extent of rad lib praxis.
But I've always loved that argument. Vote to do less harm. How about end the system to prevent the harm? Oh.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree, dude. It's absolutely ridiculous. Because nobody, not Marx, not Lenin, not Mao, not any genuinely revolutionary person would be in favor of the harm reduction argument. They were all supporters of third and vanguard parties. So I think the whole thing of voting blue is just ridiculous. It's it's just so bankrupt in terms of praxis and really morally as well, because you're just staying complicit in the system that's oppressing you, you know.
Well, you know my answer to that.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, no, we need to do dual power. We need to do vanguardism. One question I have is, where the fuck is the PSL? Where the fuck is the DSA and the CPUSA? Well, the CPUSA is telling you to vote Biden, so we can just rule them out. But, like, we have all these socialist parties in the United States. Where the fuck have they been?
Oh, the DSA, they should be just thrown out as well. I mean, let's get fucking real. The DSA are literally just a wing of the Democratic Party. What's even the point?
But they've gained some based points from me. They've gained a little bit of favor because they never endorsed Biden. They did not endorse Biden. He does not have their blessing. So for that reason alone, I give them a little credence.
I suppose there's that.
Yeah, got to take the wins where you can, man. But yeah, no, these parties, I've noticed, like all these socialist parties, they can't reach the masses. They all just seem so utterly impotent. to do anything. Like, you'd think the BLM protests would really be the spark where these parties could really hijack and take advantage and lead this movement into something more real and material. I mean, what, the DSA has like twice as many members as the Bolshevik Party at its peak, and they ain't doing shit.
Oh, I could point to during Occupy Wall Street, the Avakian RCP went down there and they tried to lead. They tried to take over, and nobody was having it.
Yeah, didn't you say they got told to fuck off, basically?
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know, man. The key is, how are we going to reach the most alienated, atomized population of consumers on the goddamn planet? People who have been absolutely fucking brainwashed against their own best interest in every conceivable way. And there are ways to do it. They can be reached. The Sanders campaign is a very telling development in that regard. Sanders was able to reach the masses. Like, he was filling stadiums full of people, and I do think that is an important development. Although I'm beyond Bernie Sanders at this point, I think one of the reasons why Sanders failed, and I talked about this in my video, is people weren't organizing outside the system. They were still complicit in it. People were still putting stock and putting faith in it. And Bernie's limits, and that's Bernie's limits. He wouldn't go against the hegemony of the DNC. He wouldn't challenge their hegemony, which is what ultimately needs to be done because, well, he's a Democratic insider and he cares more about being good friends with Joe Biden than he does about the sick and suffering American masses. He's no Vladimir Lenin, but I think it's an important development. What are your thoughts on Bernie?
Yeah, I think that after he was railroaded by Hillary Clinton, he has to know at that point that his job is to bring in the more radical elements. He knows by now that he's not going to get the leadership of that party. It's not going to happen. If they railroaded him once, and they did do it again, but I think he knew that was going to happen. I would suspect that he's compromised to a degree. He knows what his role is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I just thought you were going to say something else. Bernie, I think deep down he cares. It's just he's grown cynical. I think that happens to a lot of old people over the years, is as time goes on and nothing really changes, a lot of people as they get older just become more and more cynical, and they kind of lose that spark, that desire to really change things and make a mark like when they were younger. And I mean, you can see it with Noam Chomsky, but then again, Chomsky's always been a Democratic partisan shill. I mean, so really this behavior of him telling people to vote Biden to stop Trump is nothing unique, because he did the same thing with Hillary Clinton in 2016, and he did the same thing with Obama back in 2008. It's just the same old rhyme over and over again. Nothing fundamentally changes, and the system deteriorates and gets worse and worse, And I don't think the situation deteriorating really helps our cause either, because America collapsing doesn't. I'm just saying immiseration alone is not a precondition for revolution. People can go in the opposite direction very fucking easily. I mean, look at the Tea Party movement. Look how they exploded. Look how you have
they were supported by the elite.
They were, but and it's really just faux populism. And the right wing doesn't actually offer any solutions. The far left does, because we actually have like a scientific theory about how to make the world a better place. It's one of the few things we have going for us. We have the truth on our side. We have centuries of revolutionary theory and practice. So, yeah, I mean, it's one of the few advantages that we have over the right wing. Meanwhile, they have no solidarity, no sense of community. All they give a shit about is them fucking selves, which is why they're constantly stabbing each other in the back and trying to grift one another.
They're more about what they're against than what they support.
Exactly. They have no vision. They have no answers. All you got to do is listen to, like, hey, what problem? We need a problem. most Americans can't afford healthcare in spite of the fact that we have the resources to allocate said healthcare. The answer, let's introduce single-payer healthcare. Right-wingers, no! Problem. Affirmative action favors certain minorities and jades the college system so that they can get into college easier than whites and Asians. Right-wingers whine and complain about that. Positive affirmative action. Here's the solution. Just make college free and give everybody equal access. Right-wingers, no! Problem. Wages are not keeping pace with inflation. People are going broke, going poor, and they're having to take on all this debt in order to participate in society. Answer, let's institute a living wage so that nobody gets left behind working poverty wages. Right-wingers, no! Like, are you starting to see a trend here? They don't have
solutions. I want to be angry.
What's up?
I don't want solutions. I want to be angry.
Yeah, exactly. Let's just blame black people for all of our problems, or the lizard men, or whatever silly fucking conspiracies they're about now.
It would be better to say, I don't want a solution to the problem. I want something to blame for it.
Yeah. One of these days, I had to start bringing some conservatives onto my show just so I can debate circles around them, just for sheer entertainment value. I mean,
it's going to drain your energy awful fast. Just warning you.
I could probably find some fascist types on Discord. I was thinking about debating one person on my channel. His name's Anarch. I don't know if you're familiar with him, like Apiro, Anarch, whatever. Well, this guy makes like these long, lengthy essays where he talks about why the Soviet Union wasn't actually socialist; they were state capitalist, and he just makes these long fucking essays, long as fuck, where he just lambasts quote-unquote state socialists, and he just quotes Bakunin, and he takes Marx out of context, and like takes quotes from Marx out of context to help support his points. And he'll like quote anarchists and like criticize the USSR and like say they were just social democracies that ended up collapsing. And I'm like, well, my thing is like, if the Soviet Union was state capitalist, they were some really bad fucking capitalists if you think about it. The worst pay gap in the USSR was a 3-to-1 ratio. They subsidized a great deal of industries that weren't profitable at all. They invested a great deal long-term in the arts and in the sciences and things like going to outer space. There's no money in outer space. You know what I mean? The only reason America did it was so that we wouldn't get showed up by the Soviets, you know? I'm just saying, if they didn't have business cycles, they didn't experience any of the symptoms of capitalism, you know, and even China, which is state capitalist, experiences the symptoms of capitalism, you know? So I'm just saying they were some very shitty fucking capitalists if they were in fact a capitalist country at all, you know?
Even the shitty socialists are still better than the best capitalists.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know, but I'd like to talk about some long-term factors in collapse. So if America can get over this rump, this huge rump where Trump tries to coup the government, where you have all these Americans, because they haven't passed a stimulus bill, by the way. There is no stimulus for people's moratoriums. Like they can't, like Nancy Pelosi blocked it. And even if she didn't block it, fucking what's his name would. Bitch McConnell, yeah. So if Nancy wouldn't block it, bitch McConnell would. They haven't gotten any stimulus out there. They've just been had their heads up their ass this whole time. All these moratoriums are about to expire, and then you have the coup attempt, you have COVID, and you have the current crisis. And I'm thinking, if this doesn't break America, what are some things a decade or two down the line that could?
Well, I mean, aside from the obvious environmental shit, I definitely have the feeling that the economic is really going to be it. I think that's going to be it more than anything else. I think maybe the environmental thing is maybe a little bit further down the line than we think it is, but that it'll be economic first before it's environmental. I think that the limits to where capital can spread are essentially at their limit. Chinese capital can still expand into Africa, and it's doing that very well. But U.S. capital doesn't have anywhere else left to go. I mean, they're not breaking into Africa the way Chinese capitalism is. And with that barrier, it's going to come to a point where it's going to come to a head where there's nowhere left to go. I mean, what are they going to do to open up new markets? They would essentially have to start a war.
And
but
that
a war with who?
That would cause civil unrest as well, because Americans are very weary of war. I mean, you could get some people on board with it, but you're just going to end up with another Vietnam. Like, seriously, like, if we go to war with Iran, dude, if we went to war with Iran, we would get our asses kicked.
In fact, we already know that from the Millennium Challenge. Do you know that?
Oh, yeah, no. We got fucked up. Like, we lost 40,000 troops and our fleet was annihilated in the simulation. Like, just the first 2 days of the battle. We just got annihilated. Iran is a fucking mountain fortress. We ain't cracking that cookie.
So yeah, that one would turn into a Vietnam. Any invasion of the DPRK would turn into a Vietnam.
Oh yeah, no. I guess you could win the war with North Korea if you just genocide off 20 million people. I mean, I think that's really the only way, because the people of North Korea are all anti-American and they will fight to the death to beat out the Americans. You know, they will never surrender.
Yeah, they're not like the forgive me if I'm doing this wrong, but to a degree, a lot of the French during Nazi occupation just wanted to go back to normal life and were willing to accept Nazi occupation in order to get that. I mean, there was a great French resistance. I absolutely agree, but I think that is not what you would get in the DPRK. They would not be wanting to go back to a regular life, just accept that the imperialists are there. They would just keep fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting until every last one of them was dead.
Yeah, exactly. No, dude. Like, do you have people are so the people of North Korea are very, very, very infatuated with the Kims. They're a national icon. They're very nationalistic. They're indoctrinated with Juche ideology, and they have a very strong military first policy. And even if their weapons and gear of war is, out of date, I've heard my brother saying that South would crush the North Korea, and he was trying to sell me on how. But I tried to explain to him, it doesn't matter how good your tech is and all the logistics if you know you're not fighting a just cause. Like, that's really it.
If it was just the South and just the North, no, the North would crush them. Keeping in mind that they have an assload of artillery aimed right at the capital of the South. Like, they could completely destroy all of Seoul, like completely flatten the entire city in 2 hours. They have like 30,000 artillery pieces aimed right at it. And the second the war takes off, they're going to fire absolutely everything at the capital city and destroy it.
Oh, yeah. And then there's the situation with Iran. If I was the Grand Ayatollah and I heard the Americans were invading, assuming they were able to penetrate the mountains, they're after the oil. You know what I'm just going to do? I'm just going to bomb my own oil fields so they can't have it. That's what they're here for. I'm just going to missile my own oil fields. That's what I would do if I knew, like, if I was in charge of a country and America was invading. Like, they want the oil.
Mine the shit out of the Strait of Hormuz.
Oh, yeah. Just mine it out, blow it the fuck up. And that would crash. That would spike global oil prices if they did that, too. That would create an economic crash in and of itself.
Oh, yeah. What is it? 25% of all seaborne oil passes through the state of Hormuz.
Oh, yeah.
That would be a major economic crash. The Saudis would be losing their fucking minds over that.
One resource that's actually going to be really scarce in the future isn't even oil. It's going to be clean drinking water.
Yeah.
That's like a big one right there.
One of the things that I've always loved is that Canada has control of 2/3 of the world's freshwater resource. If you see people go this fucking nuts over oil, think about how fucking nuts they're going to go on us over the water.
You're going to have wars over water, dude. Like when we start having serious droughts and heat waves, and you're going to have so many people fleeing the global south. Like our government is just so functionally unequipped to deal or cope with that. If you just had like everyone from south the equator just uproot themselves and move north because where they live is uninhabitable, like global governments will just be flooded with refugees, and the scale of collapse will be so ridiculous. And this is coming sooner than you think, by the way. I've heard some optimistic liberals say that we're cutting carbon emissions not fast enough. We're scaled to hit 2 degrees warming by 2050. And even with the Paris Climate Accords, which, you know, nobody's really enforcing that. You know that, right? It's just a mutual agreement of countries. Just, yeah, we'll scale back our carbon emissions a little bit. We'll do a little more green. The problem is we don't have time to pussyfoot with this shit. If you go back in time 40 years, we would have had time for a Green New Deal, because then we could have done the slow transition to renewables, and the capitalists could still be rich in the process. But no, they decided there was more money in oil, so they decided to actively suppress the science for decades. And we are now at a point to where the only way we're going to be able to keep ourselves from hitting those critical tipping points is if we basically introduce 5-year plans. We would have to radically transform society very, very rapidly. Uphold eco-Stalinism, comrades.
They're not going to have a choice. Either that or die. You either sacrifice a large amount of capital or there can be no capital at all. What's it going to be?
Man, it's going to be so shitty, too, thinking about this, because so many people are going to die in the wake of this. Like, will capital be able to renew itself? Like, will it be able to, if it survives these catastrophes, the climate and ecological catastrophe, because every life support system's in decline, and if that happens, if capital's able to survive that and get over that rump, so many fucking people are going to be dead. It's going to set the clocks back on the rate of profit, will it not?
Yeah, one of the things Mark said about crisis and the tendency of the rate of profit to fall is that during crisis, capital is destroyed, and that the recovery is basically the rebuilding of destroyed capital. Well, I mean, if you destroy all the capital, then yeah, I guess you kind of got a lot of room to expand into. The question is, well, you know, most everyone is dead, so getting a market is kind of hard.
Yeah, when a third the planet dies off within the next century, half the planet's population gets Thanos snapped, basically, because that's what's going to happen. Because all our infrastructure that we need. Do you know how fragile our supply lines are? All of it relies on the spot delivery. You know what that is, right? Where we don't use trains for mass transit and the delivery of large swaths of resources at once, because as the free market has decided, it's more profitable and cost efficient to instead have trucks do on-time deliveries. So when shit gets to the supermarkets, when shit gets to the stores and so on, it depends on these very fragile but cost-efficient supply lines where you have truckers basically trucking along, you know. What happens when we have literal highwaymen, no pun intended, that just go robbing trucks on the highways, you know? Like, all of a sudden you're going to have shortages. Supply lines collapsing because there's, like, robbery and theft going on. Or you have heat waves killing off crops. So, you know, entire, like, fields of food just die, and you have famines and shit. People don't think about this stuff, man. They don't think about, like, the long-term ramifications of what's going on today. The only reason, like, our way of life is even possible is because of unsustainable industrial and agricultural practices that have been going on for, like, the last several decades. You know? People don't think about this shit.
Yeah, but freedom.
All right. This is, I mean,
But will I still have 20 kinds of Cheerios?
I mean, you probably could. You just gotta hit up several grocery stores after the apocalypse is over with. So let's see some of these. So yeah, no, I think you're right. I think the future's looking Fallout. It's looking pretty Fallout to me. I'm not gonna lie.
You know what? Just stick me in a vault, wake me up 200 years later. You know, I'll take that.
Comrade,
I'll take it from there.
I'm going to uphold the immortal science of, in the time being, my new dialectic synthesis, the immortal science of ecological Stalinism, Possadism, cockshotism. Only through the cleansing fire, hellfire of the climate apocalypse will the power vacuum of global communism be wrought. We bring back the 5-year plans, gulagging the reactionaries and all the people that are anti-nuclear, because we're going to be doing nuclear in this bitch, and we're going to institute labor time accounting using the labor theory of value and a labor credit system, and we're going to rapidly transform society, what's left of it, into communism. That's the plan, baby.
Oh, that would be just do it. It's like in a case now where just do it already. I wish it was that simple, but
well, the issue is really political will. That's really it. All this could be done. We could even do this in the context of capitalism. The issue is the political will for it. And we could create that political will, but like I said, it needs to emerge from the grassroots, and we need to be able to work with the spontaneity of the masses. So best thing we can do right now is lead the masses wherever their consciousness is now. And no, this doesn't mean fucking voting blue. That is tailism. You are tailing the masses because that is where their consciousness is. You are supposed to lead them, not tail them. And that's what you're doing when you tell people to vote blue. So really, I think advocating for third parties, building third parties up, and doing some community level organizing is about all that can really be done in terms of praxis at this given moment. Don't engage in anything like too crazy, like terrorism is just going to alienate you from the masses. Don't go around advocating for violence or any other silly shit. So yeah, I mean, someone's been asking a question.
all right.
How can we change the libertarian, authoritarian left flight? Okay, so I'm glad you brought this up. So you're familiar with this map, right? The political compass.
Yeah, I know the political compass.
Yeah. So my dad classifies himself as a conservative. My dad's kind of like a hardline anti-communist. But when you poll him on the political compass, he scores, because I've seen him do it, he scores at about here. He's in the libertarian left. So he's like right there where my mouse is at. When you poll me, last time I took it, I'm about a rung lower, and I'm all the way over here. You know, all the way to the left, 2 rungs down. My issue with this chart is it's jaded in the direction of the libertarian left, basically. It's kind of a garbage map. Like, there are straight up questions like corporations shouldn't be allowed to adhere to their contracts and commit to fraud. And it's just kind of like a loaded question, because even the likes of Thatcher and Ayn Rand are against that sort of thing. Does that make them left wing because they don't believe corporations should be allowed to engage in fraud? I mean, it's just kind of loaded. I mean, so for the political compass meme, I think a better dichotomy, because it just goes back to the days of the French Revolution, doesn't it? Is like where liberalism and like conservatism and like leftism and so on originates. I believe that's where the Overton window comes from, right? Yeah. Hold on. I honestly don't know the history behind it, but I would say there's 4 positions. You can pretty much break down people's psychological political id into 4 basic positions. The first 2 are the moderate positions. You have, the moderate left, the moderate right. The moderate left include liberals, the moderate right include conservatives. Conservatives want no change. They want everything to stay the way it is. They think everything's fine the way it is. Maybe we can tweak a couple things, go a little bit backwards here and there, small government, tax cuts, deregulations, etc. Then you have liberals. Liberals want change, but they want it to be incremental change through the confines of the system, more or less. And both sides still believe in capitalism, by the way. That's the other thing. So liberals want change, but moderate. And then you have the far left and the far right. The only thing the far left and the far right have in common is that they're generally populist and that they both want revolution. The main difference is that people on the far left want revolution in the progressive direction, while people on the far right believe society is in a state of degenerate moral decay and that we have to have a revolution going in the backwards direction. The Goldilocks wheat field memes, right? Yeah. Where they're obsessed with the fucking wheat fields and blonde bitches. Well, it's sort of like they're in their minds, it's sort of like they're chasing the dragon. They're chasing the blonde bitch in the gold wheat fields, trying to get something that never really was. They idealize this mythological past and say, we have a former glory that we need to return to. And they're just super right-wing, very silly people, universally despised by the other 3 categories. But liberals and conservatives will make a deal with the devil, so to speak, and work with fascists if it means protecting the capitalist system. And afterwards, if the fascists, as the shock troopers, are successful in thwarting and snuffing out the far left radical movement, they'll either overthrow the liberal establishment and take over the government in a coup of some kind, or they will be ousted by the liberal establishment and things go back to normal. That's like the general historical trend as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
Anyways, so I think that's all I have to say. I think we're done with the Doom stream. Is there anything you would like to talk about?
Yeah, I just want to give people an update on my ban from YouTube. I got the reply for the appeal of YouTube's incredibly dumbass decision, and they've decided, yes, the ban is going to be upheld. The last 2 videos, the video yesterday and the day before, were pre-uploaded before I got the ban. So it's going to be another 5 days until I can be back on YouTube for this. Follow my Twitter account for the latest of this. I don't even know what terms or what ideas I can use to describe this.
Anyways,
I'll be back in 5 days.
Yeah, we look forward to your return. Okay, questions, inshallah, questions. Just ask them, dude. Type them in the chat.
Oh, I got banned because they took down a video that I had from last year. It was basically a mainstream media news report on Pizzagate and explained why Pizzagate was wrong. And that constitutes cyberbullying and harassment. I don't know how that works in their mind. I appealed it without calling them stupid, and they said no.
Okay, next question. Do you agree that America collapsing is a net benefit for the world socialist movement and therefore support for Trump 2020 for accelerationist reasons? Would you like to give your answer first?
Yes. I actually would support it because a faster collapse would mean the end of imperialism faster. That is my specific reason. I don't necessarily agree that it would build revolution faster in America, but for the sake of fighting imperialism, being a third worldist, etc., that would be a benefit.
the issue with the collapse of America is you're really rolling the dice on that one, because there's no guarantee the force that secures the power vacuum is going to be a progressive force. I would actually say that the collapse of the United States, in absence of a neo-Bolshevik type movements, would that be a negative thing, because the Union would balkanize and you would have America carved up by rival imperialist interests. I don't really think that's a good thing, because we would get what few leftists there are, unless we're able to band together quick enough, we would get fucking slaughtered by reactionary gangs and bandits that will inevitably form in the wake of that collapse. I do think it's good for socialism on a global scale, because the big dick empire isn't going to be fucking with revolutionary movements all over the world anymore and backing fascist governments anymore. So
that's the point. They won't financially be able to prop up the U.S. military. If there was no U.S. federal government, there'd be no U.S. federal army, and the individual states wouldn't have armies large enough to project imperialist power. That would be the argument that I would make.
Oh yeah, no. So I don't think it's good. It's a good thing for American socialism, but I do think it's a good thing for socialism in other countries. So, I mean, in the same way that the fall and collapse of the Roman Empire was a historically necessary point in order to facilitate the rise of feudalism, I believe that the collapse of the United States is a historically necessary point for the emergence of socialism. Let's see.
No, I would agree that the destruction of that in America would not necessarily facilitate the creation of socialism in America. No, I would definitely agree with that.
This one's directed at you.
What is your opinion of the Gang of Four? The Gang of Four, I'm really iffy on that, and I don't think it really matters. It's like woulda, coulda, shoulda. The damage was already done by Mao himself before they even came into power. So I don't think it's interesting. But Bay Area 415, I'm not familiar with anything he's done.
All right, moving on. A lot of questions for you. Ooh. Jason, what countries do you think are most likely to have revolutions in the future?
Oh man, that's a hell of a question. Because right now no country is really doing that good. I would say Venezuela, if Maduro would get up off his ass and actually, finish what he started, finish what Chavez started. I would say that's the greatest potential right now.
Yeah, a big criticism that I have of Latin American socialist movements is that they are way too pacifist. They aren't aggressive enough in terms of what needs to be done. Like, if I were Maduro, I would have had the fucking capitalist class liquidated a long time ago. They would have ceased to have been a fucking thing under my governments. But he's not doing it. Instead, he's taking this collaborationist line, and he's suffering for it. And also, it's this, like, look at the example with Allende, or any other revolutionary movements in Latin America. They're all way too, they put too much stock in reformism. They put too much stock in peaceful transition to power. They don't realize that in order to build socialism, you have to expropriate, you have to liquidate, and I'm using the term liquidate as a much friendlier word for another word that I'm not supposed to say. So anyways.
Yeah, and I would say, like, come on, where have the revolutions, the long-lasting, sustaining changes taken place? Cuba, the DPRK, the Soviet Union, China, those were not peaceful transitions.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. The ruling class won't just step down. They won't just be like, oh, okay, sure, I'll give up all my wealth and power and influence and privilege peacefully, I'll step down from my ivory tower. You made a good point, Prol. I'm just going to step down. That's never happened, never has, never will. Moving on.
That's one of the criticisms that I would actually make of. Okay, well, yeah, let's just move on. Is a revolution possible in the first world, the only revolutionary movements? I think I agree that there are revolutionary people and even potentially revolutionary groups in the U.S. but I do not believe that their numbers are significant enough to carry out that revolution.
Oh yeah, no. In terms of like revolutionary potential in the first world, we're not even in the 1870s, dog. We're basically back to ground zero. Like after the fall of the USSR, I mean, we're still in the era of blackest reaction, and I think we're many a years out before we'll have something built up. But I think the work that we do today will be very, very important years down the line. Yeah. Yeah. So would you ever debate Vosh or Contra? Jason, you were a lot closer to doing it than me.
Yeah. I tried to debate Vosh. That was a thing that this happened on Twitter, and I said, okay, Vosh, I'll debate Vosh. Do it. And I said it publicly, Vosh, I'll debate you. And then Vosh replied on Twitter, who said I wanted to debate? Done.
No, I guess that's a no.
As for ContraPoints, I've never had any communication with ContraPoints, but I would debate, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'd debate them both, mainly for clout reasons, because it would direct a lot of attention to my channel. I mean, they'd be inadvertently platforming me, so I would go on to debate them, because even if I underperformed, even if I didn't do too well, I still see it as an absolute win, you know? Something you have to keep in mind is that Vosh controls the platform. He directs the conversation. He's a very, very good conversationalist. I mean, to the degree of being a literal narcissist and sociopath. He's cultivated a cult around himself where people basically believe everything he says and agree with him on literally everything. I mean, sometimes he gets challenged on his bullshit, but then he'll proceed to like shame and browbeat his audience and ban the people that are like contradicting his bullshit. So, I mean, if you want tips on how to cultivate a fucking cult, I would watch Vosh video. Anyways. Can you explain the third world position on whether the second world actually exists? I'm going to leave this one up to you.
Okay, yeah. This is a common misunderstanding. This relies on a confusion between three worlds theory and third worldism. These are two different things. The three worlds theory maintained that there's the imperialist countries, the reformist socialist countries, and the oppressed countries, etc. And that the oppressed countries should ally with the imperialism against the revisionist socialists, which is incredibly fucked. Third worldism says there are the rich exploiter countries, which is the first world, the poor exploited countries, which is the third world, and then there's a continuum between the two, which is the second world. A good example of that continuum between the two would be Greece. I mean, they're not exactly all that well off, but you could hardly call them an imperialist power. I mean, if anything, they're basically the whipping boy of the EU.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's it.
Okay. I always figured the difference, like my classification goes something like this. The third world countries are the ones being colonized and exploited. The first world countries are the exploiters and the colonizers. And the second world are neither exploited nor colonized. And that I think this is my own definition. It's kind of my scientific definition. And I mean, would you say it's fairly accurate? I don't know. Is there any problems?
Yeah, fairly accurate.
Yeah.
But I would say, but that rests on a continuum. There's varying degrees of that.
And then there's the fourth. Then there's the fourth world.
Yeah, the Native American reservations, indigenous peoples, etc.
Yeah, the sacrifice zones in the United States. You hit the streets in Cincinnati. There's horrible depravity and poverty, and it looks like a dystopic hell state on one corner, and then you go on the next street, it's gentrified. You go from seeing like poor black people and homeless people everywhere to just clean cut looking white folk, and the difference is just so massive. And when I talk about like exploitation and oppression to these two communities, you'll never believe which one gets what I'm talking about on the spot. I've noticed that. I'm not gonna lie. There's a lot more class consciousness among people of color than there are among white people, and I don't think that has anything to do with race. I just think it has to do with material conditions.
Yeah, like for example, 50 Cent coming out and saying, "Oh, I support Donald Trump. He hates black people. I don't care that he hates black people. I just don't want to get taxed." There's a good example of contradiction.
Well, I need to know if you, Jason, Mason, and Net will be on the ones to start RiceTube. It should include the Ewoks. Danky is underwater right now. I have not heard from Danky in months. He's not really active right now. He might come back, but I think he's kind of retired from making YouTube videos. We could totally do something together, have like a coalition or media project so that we can cultivate the ML side of YouTube a little bit more. I mean, I'm down.
Yeah,
You down?
I would definitely be down, and I would prefer the term beard tube.
Well, I think the reason why RiceTube was chosen was because it was since BreadTube is a food, and it's a reference to the bread book. RiceTube is like a reference to China and the East. But I mean, BeardTube, RiceTube, potato, each one works. Will I debate Nick Fuentes? No.
Will I do it? I have no opportunity. Would I do it just for the views? Yeah.
For the clout, maybe, but it would piss me off so much.
Oh,
I mean, you're not really gonna convince an audience. Like the reason why I would go on to debate Vosh or Contra is because there's at least a chance I could pull some people over to my side. There ain't no chance with Nick Fuentes because he's on the Nazi side of YouTube, and these people have to overcome so many fucking ideological barriers in their mind and construct and literally warp reality around them, around their world outlook. Starting with the conclusions and then working back, selecting the data that reaffirms it while like ignoring the data that contradicts anything. These types of people literally cannot be reasoned with. And like I said, there's a pill that there's only one pill that will solve the problem, and it's right here in this little bag. But anyways, so I don't really know if I would do it. I feel like it would be a waste of time.
Like I said, I do it for the views. But do I think it would be especially productive? No.
No, not at all. Not even close. The problem with accelerationism is the way it will fuck over many innocent people. I largely agree. I wouldn't exactly define my line as accelerationist. But I do believe in harm reduction, and I stated Trump as the harm reduction candidate because he undermines the empire. But beyond that, I don't want to see people suffer. Like, I really don't. I mean, that's not what this is about, because the rapid immiseration is just going to cause more people to become reactionary at the same time. I don't really see immiseration as a precursor for class consciousness. What creates class consciousness is just our ability to reach the masses and get them to recognize their collective will and interest. I don't know. I know they're having a new constitution drafted. Do you know what's going on in Chile?
You know as much as I do. I mean, it's hard to keep up with like every single country that's doing everything all of a sudden. Apparently, the only one who can do that is Caleb Moffitt. I don't know how the guy walks around being a fucking encyclopedia of goddamn everything.
Caleb knows his shit, but I don't know. I just think he's kind of silly on certain things, but I mean, I'm still down to talk to him. You know, I mean, I'm not against.
Yeah,
I'm not
against him. I've defended him on multiple occasions. I just noted that somehow he fucking knows what's going on in every place, every time.
So, how do you want to tackle this question?
Well, I think that that is always a very difficult question. That essentially, to me, boils down to how do you know something is right? Okay, you've got your proletarian state, and your debate within the proletarian state is what is the correct way to build socialism, and that would have to be a large amount of debate to figure out what the proper path or the proper policies would be to discovering that. And then if something is very blatantly would not do that, would dismantle it, then there's a table somewhere with firearms on it.
All right.
I mean, that's
So
that's really a question of. I think it does boil down to how do you ever know that you're right?
I have an answer of my own, and it's kind of long.
All right, good.
Revisionism as a concept was dreamed up by the Chinese and Albanian communists who detested the policies taken by the USSR under Khrushchev in the 1950s and 60s. It had a lot to do with diverging interests between Peking and Moscow. And that's the reason why the Sino-Soviet split occurred, was because of those diverging interests. Mao wanted China to basically be the leading communist force in the world. He didn't want it to be the Soviets, but unfortunately, the Soviets beat him to the punch. So the reason why the split occurred is because of a series of policies that were taken by Khrushchev's government that did alienate the Chinese. And I don't remember exactly what they were, but he did do some stuff to alienate them. I think the split was kind of inevitable. Like, even if de-Stalinization didn't occur, I think the split would have happened anyways, just because of diverging geopolitical interests between the two countries. And the ideological justification for the split drummed up by the Albanians and Chinese is revisionism. Basically, the thesis goes that the Soviet Union has become a dictatorship of the Hitlerite type. That was what Mao said in a speech. Well, basically, there was a capitalist restoration, and depending on who you ask, it took place between 1956 and 65. There's a really good book that talks about the restorationist thesis and revisionism, and I highly recommend you look into it. It is called The Myth of Capitalism Reborn, as well as The Red Flag Flying, where it explains why certain policies took place in the USSR and how it wasn't ideological why they did X, Y, and Z so much as it was just pragmatic decisions that were made. Like, one of them being the Kazan reforms in 1965. This is often like a sticking point for a lot of people. They say that was like the official restoration of capitalism because it prioritized the profit motive in certain industries. And the thing is about the Kazan reforms is they were introduced in order to boost efficiency and productivity by trying to get managers, mid-managers to care more about productivity and efficiency in production. It yielded mixed results and was scrapped in the early 1970s in favor of something else during like their 11th, 12th, 5-year plan. Well, anyways, long story short, I'm not really concerned about revisionism. The way that you keep roaders out of the party and people that threaten the system is really what you would do is you would have more direct democracy. You would have a consensus on certain issues. Like, you would make sure the party has to have a consensus with the public before certain policies and decisions get made. And if the party is ultimately beholden to the public, and the public generally likes, the way the system's going, people are happy with the way things are and they're satisfied, then, it's going to be very, very difficult for a rotor to take charge and take power. And this was especially the issue in the USSR during its formative years. There were ex-czarist officials that ran for popular positions, and they were outvoted by a 10-to-1 ratio. What ultimately led to the contradictions that unraveled the USSR were the inability. One of them was the inability to plan, really, for do complex economic planning on the scale that they did. They didn't even have barcodes in the 1970s. Instead, what they had, you know what barcodes are used for, right? They're used to track your packages. And if you don't have barcodes, it's very difficult to keep track of where resources end up. And they were talking about implementing cybernetics to alleviate the planning issues that they had. The reason why they were slow to implement it was because of there were tested, true planning methods that were used by the planners that they didn't want to just do away with in favor of something new and experimental. But I believe by the 1980s, they had a fully functioning ASPR cybernetic system in place. The problem is people like Gorbachev came along. The likes of Gorbachev came along for a number of reasons, because there were a lot of political and economic issues. Really, you just have to find ways to deal with corruption. You can't just attack revisionism, all right? quote unquote revisionism or just bad Marxism or bad policies. What you have to do is address the environment that causes these bad ideas to emerge in the first place. And I think in the context of a modern planned economy, we could do that a lot better. You know, you could have auditors like checking our politicians and representatives of their activities. You could have like independent people's courts to determine what is and isn't like a proper socialist line. And I think that would be a good way to deal with it. So sorry for the lengthy response, but hey.
No, we asked for a response.
Yeah. Hope you guys like it. Anything else? Anything else? Oh yeah, Corn Man bad. I wasn't really. People think I'm a Khrushchevite for some reason, just because like I don't really like hate Khrushchev. I mean, I'm not anti-Khrushchev any more than I am like anti any other like historical figure. My thoughts on Khrushchev is he made some mistakes. I think he had the revolution's best interest in mind, and he meant well, but he made some mistakes, and some of them include denouncing Stalin in a very un-Marxian way. That's one of them. He also tried to grow corn in Siberia. That's another really big one. You know about that? Why he's called the Corn Man, right?
Yeah.
Because of his plan to grow corn in Siberia, and it didn't pan out very well. Snowy tundras aren't really a great place to grow corn. There are other things he did, but he dismantled the terror, and I think that the dismantling of Stalin's terror was an inevitability. If it wasn't Khrushchev, it was going to be somebody else. Like, because you can't maintain a political system of just iron discipline and terror where you're just constantly liquidating people forever. Eventually, you have to have like a material incentive that keeps people involved in the system in the first place, you know? Like, the terror was a necessary component to Stalin's regime. It wasn't a glitch, it was a feature. The terror was basically to liquidate the components that were deviating away from what Stalin and his inner clique considered the path to socialism. And at the same time, you had the populist fervor and the pioneering spirit of the Soviet people from below that were enabling and reinforcing the terror and looking up to Stalin as a father figure of sorts, you know, Father Stalin. But both of those things went away in time. And when the terror is gone and the pioneering spirit is gone, because now you have a new generation of people that have their needs met. Well, as it turns out, when you have your needs met, your wants tends to go up as well. And one of the issues that the traditional Soviet economy had was it wasn't very good at responding at the choices and desires of the consumers, because one, it's very difficult to plan for millions of consumer goods without computers and IT. Two, they had to devote a lot of resources to the arms race, and three, they had to devote a lot of resources to subsidizing and repairing the Eastern Bloc. So unfortunately, due to the hands they were dealt, I feel like the Soviet experiment was kind of damned from the start in a lot of regards. What are you gonna do? No, his secret speech did harm. It definitely did harm, and Khrushchev was definitely wrong for doing that. But like I said, I think de-Stalinization was kind of an inevitability, and you are correct in basically shitting on Khrushchev for this. I'm not against it. I'm just saying that de-Stalinization was inevitable. Here's a question. I understand you had certain problems with party organizing, but would you still advocate or try and organize with people?
Yes. Agitation's always good. Organizing's always good.
Oh yeah.
Just a lot of people suck at it.
Oh yeah, no. I think a lot of that tactics are just out of date, and we just need to improve on them. Someone's asking what you're smoking.
This is actually it's not my usual brand. Principes. It's just some pre-packaged cigar from the convenience store because I can't get to the stuff that I normally smoke. My preferred brand, that being the one that balances taste with ability to be able to fucking afford it, would be Super Corona 263 Sweets.
Damn, you know your cigars. There are these carbon copies that I buy from the gas station. They're carbon copy Cuban cigars that I puff on from time to time. Tobacco is not really a DOC of mine. I'm more of a alcohol plus uppers kind of guy. But anyways.
Well, I can go and actually get Cuban cigars. So.
Oh, fuck you. I'm jealous, man.
Expensive as fuck, though. Watch out.
Oh yeah, I believe it.
A Cohiba can run you $25 for one cigar.
Okay, so I have an answer to this question, but hold on. I have an answer to it, but if you want to know how you can secure resources without having the money and money that you need through legal means, I cannot help you. All I can tell you that is if you want to secure cash, fast cash, you are going to have to engage in similar behavior as this man has in order to get the resources that you need to channel into revolutionary activity. Just be careful. I'm not telling you to do that, of course. Definitely don't do this. Don't follow this man's example. I would never tell you to do that on this channel.
We're just saying that it's a thing that has historically happened.
And has worked. Very effective, very useful. Don't do it. Anyways.
Yeah, I'm considering whether or not I really want to do that. I mean, is it really worth the effort?
What was it?
Oh, basically, it was like from back in 2011. I had I ran this like short-term cooking show, making like really cheap food for cheap. I had broke ass breakfast, and I made what was called a spagel.
A spagel?
A bagel. Miracle Whip, a slice of pepper jack cheese, and fried Spam with a side of Cool Ranch Doritos.
That sounds, not gonna lie, kind of gross.
It wasn't bad, but it was meant to be a low-cost food option.
I mean, it really depends where you live. I mean, if you live out in the middle of nowhere, you're pretty fucked. But if you're in a city, it's not that hard to find lefty cliques. You can find reading circles. You can find parties and orgs, like in virtually every city in the country. They're just small. I mean, take your pick. Find a local org near you. Get involved. If not, try and start a reading group. Try and get people involved. I was trying to start a reading group at my job, and I've got a couple people who are interested. I mean, you'd be surprised. Like, just ask around, try to make friends, try to like pertain people's lively problems to the system. You can just, talk to your coworkers about it. Anyways.
Now, LBRY, I just Googled that right now, so I didn't know what that was. I have considered backing up my shit on something. I'm not sure what yet. I would prefer something where I can get it monetized, but I think it would be better to find something that will hold it for a long time rather than go for the monetization. But yeah, I'm considering a really big backup. I don't know. I'm kind of thinking in terms of probably leaning towards Daily Motion. Something like that. I mean, Daily Motion's been pretty good to press TV, so yeah, I guess that's something.
Where is Red Scare TV? Okay, so do you know about the situation with Red Scare? I can give
I know the stuff that would not be publicly appropriate to say.
Okay. How much should I reveal? Because I'm on speaking terms with Red Scare. I've talked to him a little bit, but I mean, he's in a bad spot financially right now. He's got a lot of debt, and he lost his job recently over some bullshit. So that's the reason why he hasn't been around. He's been trying to find work. Apparently he's got a kid he's got to take care of. I don't know.
Yeah, let's just say I don't want to.
Yeah, I don't want to
get into someone's personal life.
Yeah,
Let's
yeah.
just say his situation's fucked.
Yeah, he's in a bind. I don't want to reveal too much. Worse, definitely worse. And it's going to continue to get. You weren't here for this. Hold on. I was just talking about this at the beginning of the stream. But I'm just gonna. I would tell you worse, but you know what? I'm gonna let you decide. This is the number of confirmed cases, and this is the most recent spike: 85,000 new cases as of yesterday. New record. So, what do you think? Is it getting better? Or is it getting worse?
We're number one. We're number one.
USA.
What's it? The number of deaths. We're just waiting for it to hit 3,000 so that we can say a 9/11 a day.
Yeah. Doesn't really look like we're getting any more questions. Yeah, I'm hoping Red Scare gets his stuff together. My heart goes out to him. He's a good dude. I met him once.
Looking for a job in this climate. Oof.
Oh yeah, good luck with that. I mean, unless you plan on working for like FedEx or Amazon, they're always hiring. But that's just because everyone's ordering their shit online right now.
Yeah, I guess there's that.
Yeah.
And there
Anyways,
still leaves much to be desired for those jobs.
Oh yeah. So one last question before we close. You would have an answer to this. I have no comment.
I don't have any updates. I'm still trying to get a hold of the Swaziland comrades. It's hard to get a hold of because, well, the internet in Africa sucks.
No, here's one more. Jason, mind if I got you and Paul Morn in contact?
Who was Paul Morn again? I don't mean that as an insult. Like, oh, who's Paul Morn? I legitimately don't pay attention to the other people in the community, just because reasons. So I'm not like trying to insult them by saying, you know, who's this guy? I never heard of him.
All right. So we're running about 2 hours. I have to get back to fixing my girlfriend's car. Do you have any closing thoughts? I've got nothing.
No,
honestly.
no, I'm good.
All right. Well, it's been real, guys. It's been a good stream, comrades. This is going to be my last stream for the month of October. There's one thing I forgot to do. I forgot to shout out my Patreons, so I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick. And I meant to do this at the beginning of the stream, but I keep fucking forgetting. Come on. I don't remember their names. I got to pull it up on there. Oh yeah, it's my 2 Patreons. Yeah. Shout out to my Patreons. Where are you? Here we go. Their names are Kyle and Alex, I believe. Yeah. Oh, wait, no. Yeah. Kyle Rapp. Yeah, shout out to Kyle Rapp and Roman Alexander. I'm going to shout you guys out at the beginning of my Patreon next time. So, yeah, there's that. And, yeah, I think we're done here. Y'all have a nice day. Yes, long live the immortal science. Good talking to you, Jason.
Yep.
Red salute.